Madagascar and India have very close relationship. There have been high-level engagements. The Indian president has been to Madagascar, and now with me is the foreign minister of Madagascar, who is here in Delhi. And this is an important visit after a long time. A foreign minister from Madagascar has come to Delhi. What is the key focus of your Delhi visit, if you can explain, sir, that?
As you rightly said, this is my first visit to India. And I'm undertaking this mission because of the situation, of course, in East Europe. The war in Ukraine is a global concern. And Madagascar and India abstained from voting resolutions against pros and cons to solve this conflict at the United Nations. So this is one point that we need to exchange notes with my colleague, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of India. Then there are also other issues, global issues like climate change, and of course the issue on the follow-up of COP26, as well as other issues like terrorism, and of course the common vision on Indo Pacific region. As you know, Madagascar is part of western side of the Indian Ocean. So we came here responding to the invitation of the Indian government, and we are very honored by that.
So it's a long list, but how do you characterize this relationship between India and your country?
It's an excellent relationship for a long time. We have established a diplomatic relation since 1960. So in fact, we are celebrating this anniversary this year. So it's an excellent cooperation in various sectors. So we are very happy with that.
So amidst the COVID pandemic, we know that there was a lot of cooperation. India has been sending out vaccines under its initiative, and of course reaching out to many countries in the Indian Ocean. Sagar Mission 1, Sagar Mission 2 is being talked about. So amidst the COVID pandemic, what kind of cooperation both the countries had?
Well, I can mention, for example, cooperation in agriculture, where India continues to provide technical cooperation in detecting fertile soil where we can plant, where we can grow rice and have better yield. We have also cooperation in military cooperation. Unfortunately, in the current context, we are a little bit criticized why we have military cooperation with many countries like India, for example, and yet we need to continue to address the issues of national and regional defense. So these are the areas in maritime as well. In maritime sector, we will very soon think of establishing a memorandum of understanding where we can also develop technical cooperation for the maritime port in Madagascar. The main port there is at the east coast of the island, which means that we are much closer to India than in Europe or in America. So this is one area as well that we want to develop with India.
So you mentioned about the military cooperation, the defense cooperation, especially in the maritime. You talked about the port cooperation. If you can give details on that, and also when it comes to naval cooperation, we have seen Indian ships going to your country. If you can talk about how this is going forward in future.
That's correct. Well, as you rightly said, the Indian Navy ships called the Jalashwa Shardul and Kesari were received in Madagascar during the COVID crisis in 2020 and 2021. And I recall that there were Navy training with the Indian Navy mobile training team at that time, as well as transportation of relief materials for disaster victims, and also donations that were provided during that time. So it's kind of in the same time a military, in a sense that it's a navy ship, but also it is part of a global cooperation, since they provided also medicine against COVID-19. Then there are also exchanges of experiences and visits within the framework of military multilateral military events organized by India. Then also at the higher level visits, I do recall that there were in March 2021 in New Delhi a meeting of Madagascar Minister of National Defense. He came here to participate to the Indian Ocean Conference. Then in November 2021 as well, the chief of the military État-Major in Madagascar came also to India. So as you see, there are many opportunities for India and Madagascar to continue to strengthen that military cooperation without, of course, any biases in terms of how do we use this military cooperation, be it for for the Indian defense concern or Madagascar defense issue. We don't have the enemies in Madagascar, fortunately. So it's just a very friendly cooperation, although it's a military cooperation yet, but it's for peaceful consideration.
So you mentioned in your first answer about Indo Pacific. In fact, you also raised this question at the dialogue, asking the Indian External Affairs Minister, how do you see this vision, the Indo Pacific vision for your country? How helpful you find it, and how it connects your part of the Indian Ocean essentially with the wider Pacific Ocean?
I think it's a very legitimate vision. Madagascar is situated geographically at the western side of the Indian Ocean. India is in between the Pacific and the Indian Ocean, and it goes without saying that it's normal that we have to look forward and have a common willingness for a common destiny, so to speak. And we have to strengthen dialogues to make sure that we address the issue of terrorism, the piracy, transnational organized crime, illegal fishing as well. And you know that the Indian Ocean and Pacific is a very strategic ocean for superpower, and everyone would like to have its part of sharing the responsibility to address these global issues. So we see the ambition to have a common understanding on how we address these issues globally within this geographic area. There are many countries that are concerned with these issues, and we need to enhance dialogue to make sure that we go toward the same direction in the near future.
But do you see some kind of practical cooperation between India and your country with Madagascar in terms of this vision? I mean, giving, for example, the Colombo Security Conclave, which sees the participation of Sri Lanka, India, Maldives. Do you see becoming part of it? Like you helped India become an observer member of the Indian Ocean Commission, of the Djibouti Code of Conduct. So do you see some kind of practical cooperation in that terms?
As you rightly said, India will be an observer at the Indian Ocean Commission. By the way, Madagascar is now the president of that Indian Ocean Commission for this year. And we are going to make sure that India will play a major role to ensure that we continue to have a friendly approach on these sub-regional issues. Now, I asked this morning how India can play a leading role, because India is a superpower, economic and military power in this region. So I think that like this dialogue, 2022 Raisina dialogue, India can send messages to neighboring countries to say, for example, in the case of Sri Lanka, that we need to continue avoiding any tension, because that would create also a frustration for other countries. But these are difficult issues. It has economic consequences, as well as social and political unrest. So we shall be very prudent in finding the right balance, so that Sri Lanka, first of all, and all neighboring countries are in a peaceful comfort. So we shall avoid discomfort because of such or such event in the neighboring countries in the Indian Ocean area.
So you are the chair of the commission, the Indian Ocean Commission.
Yes, I am. For 1 year.
Anything being planned, anything big event being planned where perhaps India is invited? We can see in an Indian visit, or under the chairmanship, we do expect a lot of events being organized.
Yes. There will be a summit very soon. And I'm going to invite the Minister of Foreign Affairs of India to come and attend that summit in Madagascar. That would be a symbolic and important sign on the quality of the relationship between Madagascar and India, but also in this context of the Indo Pacific vision. So we can see more high-level engagements, because our president has been to your country. You are here in Delhi. Foreign minister perhaps goes, but when is your leadership coming to Delhi? Any It's going to come very soon. President Randriamandrato is invited to come in June, and it's an honor for my country and for His Excellency President Randriamandrato to visit India and strengthen the cooperation and the relation with India.
So climate change is another big worry for the region. Given that it impacts many countries in the Indian Ocean region, there are worries in Maldives, there are worries, of course, for India as well. How is your country trying to fight this scourge when it comes to climate change?
First of all, Malagasy population has a natural resilience behavior. Unfortunately, these days we encounter many disasters from 4 cyclones, and I'm told that even now there is another cyclone in April, which is unusual, and we have to maybe correct the way we prepare the population for such a natural disaster. You cannot stop cyclone. There is no such scientific or technological solution to avoid cyclone for the time being. And by the way, sometimes cyclone brings rains, and we need rains as well for growing rice in Madagascar. Unfortunately, we have less and less rain because of the climate change you mentioned. But with these cyclones, we correct a little bit the flow of water in the river. We have better irrigation, but in the same time we have to mitigate as well the bad effect of the cyclone, because it destroys houses, it destroys trees are cut, and roads are also unpracticable. So we are now making sure that populations at the local level are much more aware of what should be done when there are cyclones, threatening the country. And also, we develop a policy to have, buffer stock of rice, for example, during the rainy season, which is from December to April, so that we don't have any shortages of crops during that period. So we are well prepared, but we are never protected from such a natural disaster, unfortunately.
So initially, in your first answer, you also mentioned about the Russia-Ukraine conflict. If you can elaborate to our viewers about your government's policy, your government's stance on this issue.
We are far from that war, from such a conflict. It's a competition for being dominant in this part of Eastern Europe, in between Russia, who for a long time, more than 20 years, and even before that, Russia always said, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, that there must be, consideration of their strategic defense. Of course, later on, many pro-Soviet countries have joined the European Union, as well as the NATO. And the NATO is the United States of America. And so we know the story. We know what is happening. Two countries, the United States and Russia, having nuclear capabilities, competing to be more influential in Ukraine. Ukraine, who wishes now to join the European Union, and maybe also the NATO. So that brings a lot of confusion on having a diplomatic dialogue in a peaceful manner. And unfortunately, the United Nations seems to have no teeth to really establish such peaceful environment. But I personally believe that sooner or later we will listen to those who have not chose for having a biased vision. India and Madagascar and many other 58 countries abstained from such a position, radical position. So I spoke with my colleague here in India that maybe we need to have a mediation position with South Africa, India, Madagascar, and other countries who wishes also to contribute to the resolution, peaceful resolution of this conflict in Eastern Europe. But unfortunately, I hear so many negative feedback for the time being, and the tension is now soaring, and for now we continue to exchange notes on that and continue to have a good spirit. So that's it's a complicated, very complicated geostrategic issue in Europe. But we are very far from that. This is why we don't want to get involved in any pro or cons position. We are taking that position according to our culture, to our history, and this is why we are very close to India and to South Africa in that conflict.
So my last question to you is, it's a complex world and there is worry, especially regarding China, especially here in Delhi. We have not had very good relationship with China, especially in last 2 years because of what has happened at the border. There is worry over Chinese presence in the Indian Ocean. How do you see this worry as the illegal fishing, as you mentioned about it? Essentially, do you see increased Chinese encroachment in the Indian Ocean, and is that a worry for your country?
Well, Nelson Mandela said one day, "Your enemy is not our enemy." Let me borrow that and say, well, we may have issues with China, illegal fishing and other issue as well, but we are not the enemy of China, where we have no enemy in Madagascar. We cooperate with everyone, everybody who would like, to support us in developing our island. So I hope that you will solve the border issue between India and China. But as far as Madagascar is concerned, we have no problem with China for the time being. We continue to cooperate and solve problems diplomatically.
Well, thank you so much, sir. On that note, it's a pretty interesting interview and getting a view about what the sense is about the global geopolitics and, of course, your relationship with India as well. Thank you so much, sir, for speaking to WION.
Thank you.